Hi everybody, Laura here. Welcome back to the We Are video series and thank you so much for joining us again. Before I get into who our next guest is, I must remind you about the incredible book of business that we've just launched. We know that you have a voice and we want England to hear it, and the book of business is doing just that. So if you are a young entrepreneur or small business owner that knows how to get the job done, then you need to be on the book of business. Click the link down below to sign up and list your business. Right, our next guest on the We Are video series is Jaemin Frazer, who's regarded as one of Australia's best life coaches. He's also the founder of the Insecurity project. Jaemin believes that you need to get to the core of your insecurities in order to reach your full potential, and I 100% agree with him. We as young entrepreneurs all face insecurities in this crazy world that we live in. It's a daily occurrence and daily hurdles that we have to overcome. In this video, Jaemin and I discuss all things insecurities, how to deal with them, what might come up, ways to rethink insecurities, and how to work your way around them. So if this is something that is of interest to you, stick around and keep watching. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we are officially recording. So thanks for reminding me. But yeah, let's start with your origin story, who you are, where you started, and how you got into the Insecurity project.
Okay. Well, it probably starts when I became a church pastor at 23. So I grew up in a Christian home. My parents modeled a version of Christianity that was very, very attractive to me, very, very meaningful. And when I kind of considered all my career options, I really felt strongly led to kind of go down that path myself. And so went and did a degree in theology and trained as a minister, and then was given the opportunity to lead the church I grew up in when I was 23, which was way earlier than I thought was ever going to happen. So it was kind of a baptism of fire in many ways. We had a Christian school and a daycare center, and discovered very early into the tenure that we were trading insolvently. So it was a deep dive into business as well.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring that up is because as pastor, you're invited into people's world to have conversations about change and about life and about happiness and family and the things that matter. But the interesting culture around Christianity is that people typically outsource the change work to God. So if I pray, if I just have faith, if I trust God, then he will magically somehow fix all the bits that aren't working in my life and I won't have to do anything. And so it was really a weird idea that kept people quite childlike and immature, and the idea of responsibility and self-awareness always felt too secular within my church congregation. So I always found that very strange, and so probably was a pretty frustrated pastor by the end of that 10 years. And when I got introduced to the coaching skill set by a mentor of mine on a retreat, I just thought, this is a missing technology. This is extraordinary. These tools belong. These tools are essential for doing life well. And was such a strong resonance with these tools that immediately I went away and signed up for a diploma in coach training. And like literally 2 days into the first 3-day intensive, a month later, I decided I was going to quit my job. I was also working as a school chaplain at the time. So I thought, coaching is the thing. I think that really is central to me and where I could add the most value, and it's most aligned to who I am. No one in my world thought that was a good idea at the time. Like literally, my wife even was curious as to around whether that would work. She thought that was a crazy idea. But my friends and family, everyone knew me as pastor, just was like, they had no framing story for me to transition from pastor to coach other than I must be going backwards. I must be pursuing worldly gain or being greedy or selfish, or I must be backsliding. So it was a very difficult transition, but I just knew that it was me and I knew that it was right. And so it was a chance to really go inward to check in my own motivations and desires. So just loved the learning and loved how practical it was and how quickly it accelerated my own growth. and then out of the overflow of that, what I was able to do with others. But it wasn't, it was probably a year into that journey when I thought, right, I'm actually going to turn my hand to writing my first book. And I'd always dreamed of doing that one day. And it was a really interesting experience because I spoke to my wife and my best friend that's what I was going to do. Went back to my hotel room where I was staying off the back of some coach training, wrote the first chapter of the first book. So excited, so passionate. Yes, I'm doing it. I'm putting work out there. This is great. But then literally the moment I shut that laptop at about 11 o'clock that night, all that energy turned to fear and dread and, oh my goodness, what have I done? Now I've put myself out there. What if I fail? What if I'm no good? What if it's hopeless? What if this doesn't work? And so it was so racked with fear and anxiety, and kind of uncovered this mountain of insecurity that was probably lying dormant and I'd never even known about, but was exposed because I stepped out of my comfort zone. So I just knew then that if I didn't find a way to solve this insecurity problem in my own life, that I would never be the kind of guy that reached my potential. I would shrink back, and I thought that was a horrible option. So it kind of began an obsession to work out, how does this get solved? Has anyone ever solved this before? What to do with insecurity? Yeah. It seemed that most people were managing it, and the thought was you couldn't really solve it. But I discovered that some people had found a way through. And so my work was to really deconstruct what they'd done differently. And so began this process of developing a skill set around solving that problem. And fast forward, probably 8 years later, and I really, all roads were leading down that path fully. It's always what I was doing as a coach, the deeper conversations about belief. But it's probably a bit over 2.5 years ago when I decided that I was going to brand myself as the Insecurity Project, put a flag in the ground and say, this is the problem that I want to solve. It's the only problem I want to solve in the world. I told my business coach at the time that's what I wanted to do. He said, no, that's the wrong name.
I love it.
It's like, no, that can't be. That's, people are insecure about being insecure. No one's going to put their hand up and say, hey, Jaemin, can you help me solve that? And it's against business rule. You're supposed to pitch the prize, not the problem. So you should be the security coach or the confidence expert or the self-esteem guy. You can't be the Insecurity Project. And it took the wind out of my sails for a few days, but on reflection, it was a really interesting moment because I kind of dried my eyes and had to think about it and went, hang on a minute, Jaemin, he's not your mum. Like, it doesn't matter if he doesn't get it. It's not his vision. What do you want to do? What are you going to do? What are you prepared to do about it? And it was like, okay, you're right. This is what I want. It's all that I want. I want to lead a conversation globally about solving a significant problem. So that's what I'm going to do. And I don't really need anyone else's permission or agreement. And so it was a really defining moment for me to go, okay, I'm ruined for anything else. I'm all in. Let's go. Insecurity. And it's almost been a masterstroke because very few, if anyone else in the world, has branded themselves so strongly with that one word. And so people around the world discover the Insecurity Project and have found great value in it. So, so that's the background. This year's seen the release of the Unhindered book, the 7 Essential Practices for Overcoming Insecurity. So that's been a really exciting addition to the work. And
I mean, amazing, absolutely amazing story. And the cats has decided to come in. Do you use what you learned in theology to guide your coaching courses?
No, not at all. I loved my experience in that world, and it's really added richly to who I am. But I think I'm a very pragmatic person and love to look at insecurity as a very predictable problem, very rational problem. Most people imagine it as mysterious and mystical and difficult and unknowable and weird. I think, no, let's turn a few lights on and see it's very scientific, very strategic, and very solvable. So it's certainly, there's a lot of people who work as life coaches in the wellness, health and wellness space who bring a very spiritual element to their work. I think life is spiritual, definitely, but I think the focus of the Insecurity Project is incredibly practical. It's incredibly thought through and intelligent about our responsibility. It's our part in this mess. How do we contribute to our own fears being developed, and how can we be part of eradicating those fears.
So you pretty much deal with them straight on. You
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
like, right.
absolutely. And it's beautiful. Like practice 5 in my model is get help from someone who doesn't care about you. And so when I have the privilege of being invited into someone's world, my very first job is to convince them I don't give a shit about them. So much fun, right? Because they think they need someone who cares. They think they need someone who's going to support them and encourage them and believe in them. But no, that's not useful. So I come in as an objective observer who can take them out of their story and into process and give them tools and frameworks that they can then apply to their life. So it's very clean and very direct and very practical, and for that reason, very effective for facilitating lasting change.
Right, and giving sort of the power back to them to make that change. So
100%, yeah.
Guard them along the way and be like, I don't actually care, but you figure it out yourself.
Well, yeah, and the distinction is clearly I care. Like I bring my whole heart and soul. I'm a nice guy, but I realise that caring means that I have a vested interest, which means I get in the way, which means it's about me.
Yeah,
and I'm not the hero in this story. I'm just the guide. And so I think that's a really key distinction to realise that you do need help to solve this problem, but help from someone who's not going to get in the way by positioning themselves as the expert and telling you what to do.
Right. That's amazing. I really like that. And I'm pretty sure you yourself, as well as Insecurity as a business, the Insecurity project as a business, has had to overcome many challenges and hurdles sort of along the way. And I guess one of them is the insecurity
of course.
Of being insecure. So if you don't mind just elaborating on sort of what hurdles you have had to overcome.
For sure. So, I grew up in a small country town in regional Australia. And so, the ambitions to go do something meaningful in the world, the first story I had to overcome is, hang on a minute, Jaemin, who are you and where are you from? What are you going to go do? Like, can you just settle down a bit? That's not you. You're not one of the big boys. Like, you're not special. That's not where you play. And so this insecurity, well, maybe I'm not good enough to do this kind of work. So definitely that was the first kind of story and opinion to overcome. And every time, like I love the idea of solving the insecurity for the level of growth that you're at now, so that you can be unhindered here. But if you're unhindered here, you will inevitably grow forward, take new territory, explore new boundaries, and therefore bump into new levels of uncertainty because you're outside your comfort zone. And so insecurity arises at every new level of growth because you work out that you're good enough for this challenge and this level, but are you good enough for the next level?
Yeah.
So I can write one book. Could I write 2 books? I don't know. If I write 2 books, could I write 3 books? Oh my goodness. I could charge this amount to help people solve insecurity. Could I charge that amount? I could work with this many people. Could I work with that many people?
Yeah.
I could work with this kind of person. Could I work with that kind of person?
Yeah.
My vision, the only thing I think about at the moment is working with the UN, is coaching world leaders, is creating conversations at a global level around this problem of insecurity. And so to believe that I belong there, obviously I've had to update my story and to face opinions that I've formed and insecurities that says I can't this far and no further. I'm not good enough. I don't belong there. 100%. I'm non-negotiable about smoking what I'm selling. And it's out of the overflow of my own personal experience overcoming insecurity that I'm so certain that it is a problem that can be solved for others as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure, have you ever sort of had any mental challenges that you, like your mental health? Have you ever had times where you've had to take a step back and think, I really need to work on that? And sort of how did you work on it? What were your ways of dealing with mental health problems that you might have faced?
Yeah, well, I think I love the idea that anxiety needs a backstory to survive. So I think there are definitely times where I've put myself in situations that's created massive anxiety. And so I think it's always an opportunity to stop and reflect in, what must I believe about myself in order to be anxious right now? But there have been key coaches and mentors along my journey that I have just reached out to in moments when I got stuck, in moments I've been lost in my own stuff, when I couldn't see a way forward, when I was going to give up, when uh, the challenges within my own storytelling I couldn't see a way out of. And so there's been many times along the way where coaching conversations have been instrumental in helping me overcome current limits in my thinking and beliefs and create new stories. So it's one constant evolution of growing and becoming enlarged and updating the quality of my beliefs and the stories that I'm living out of. Happens
Yeah, I
all the
mean,
time.
I think one of the biggest things that plays into insecurity, especially amongst young people, is social media. And that instant, I speak about it quite a bit, but I find it so important. The whole idea of the Young Entrepreneurs of England, it's not about me, it's about the community. I want to be able to put them in arm's reach of potential people that may be able to help them along the way. And that's sort of exactly why I'm trying to grow a community of really cool people who can actually help somebody like yourself and a couple of other people, someone can actually have a conversation with you and be like, right, Jaemin, I'm really struggling in this area of my life. Let's have a conversation about it, and how can we sort of figure it out? And that is literally the reason why I'm building the community, because I have been that person who was in that place. And one of the biggest things that played on my insecurity was social media.
Sure.
I saw a lot of people, if you can say, winning at life. They were younger than me, but had more than me. Or some friends from high school who were sort of, buying houses and starting families. And here I am, when we moved over, we lived with my parents again, literally zero in the bank account. And I don't know where to go, and why is something not happening?
Social media, I think, to touch on,
Yeah.
we're given constant feedback about people who appear to be doing better than us, which highlights the fact that perhaps we're not as good. If we're good enough, we'd be doing as well as they were. So I think it definitely plays into the insecurity problem, because insecurity is about trying to meet our need for validation and prove that we are good, and the child can only look outside themselves for that validation and approval in comparison and through external feedback. However, the adult, adulthood is about self-sufficiency, and that's not just physical and financial self-sufficiency. That's emotional, intellectual, relational, psychological self-sufficiency. So the role of the adult human is to bring that in-house, is to stop looking outside for validation, approval, acceptance, comparison, and to be the one that validates their own existence, to be the one that deeply loves and accepts, to be the one that forms beautiful opinions, to be there for you. And until you understand that's your job, you'll constantly be looking in all the wrong places for that validation, and your cup will always be empty. You'll never feel like you're doing enough, being enough, having enough. There'll always be someone further down the path, always someone who looks better or stronger or prettier or faster or wealthier. So that's the importance of understanding the process of overcoming insecurity, so that you free yourself from this cycle of chaos and madness that drains all your energy and all your creativity, and positions you unhindered by doubt, fear, and insecurity, so that you can show up at your best, where it matters most, with your cup full, ready to do good work and make a meaningful contribution.
Yeah. What are one or two sort of, or a couple of misconceptions you feel young people have when they're starting out on their entrepreneur journey?
I think that the challenge of being a young person starting on your entrepreneurial journey is that it's often driven by the need to prove something to someone, which may or may not be inevitable. I don't know, but eventually will become toxic.
Yeah.
And won't be anywhere near as fulfilling as you imagine it will be.
Yeah.
Because the people who told you couldn't or you shouldn't or you wouldn't probably have forgotten they ever said that to you by the time you've achieved it, to be honest. And they probably don't even care.
Yeah.
And they probably didn't even care when they said you couldn't do it. And it probably was never even about you anyway. So to be driven by that, it might cause you to push some boundaries early on and do some interesting things. However, it's dangerous energy to be motivated by. So I think that's a really interesting point to consider as a young person, just to check in with your motivation, and realize that ultimately the most sustainable motivation for any good work in the world, and the most beautiful motivation, is internal. That you have decided this is what you'd like to do because you'd like to do it, not because you've got to prove anything to anyone, not because someone said you wouldn't. And yeah, so you're not proving your worth to the world by what you can do. And your work is to discover that you matter, separate from what you do, so that you can come into the world with your cup full and then do good work for the sake of it. You've got something meaningful to give. So I think that's what I would say to young people starting out on their journey.
Yeah, I mean, I actually got goosebumps with what you were saying there, because again, for so long, and just starting the community, I've had a couple of people come up and be like, oh, I've tried something and it didn't work, I'm done, or I don't understand why I'm not, not enough for something. And what you said with discovering that the only thing you really need to realize is that you matter. And I think that's truly, truly important, because so the whole idea of young entrepreneurs is to be like a home away from home. I want people to be comfortable to ask questions they wouldn't usually ask. I want it to be an open place of open discussion, where we're here to deal with questions and help young entrepreneurs reach their full potential. But one of the biggest things that we have to overcome is allowing people to open their minds to understand that as individuals, they truly matter. And what sort of they've been through in life, whether, they've had a really, really bad upbringing or they've had an okay upbringing, where they are at a point in their life, they need to be able to make that change and make that step, understand that they matter, and do it themselves, and not, like you said, not allow those outside influences and what their grandmother or their grandpa or a teacher once said to define them. So just with saying that, I wasn't the best student at school. I wasn't very smart, well, book smart, put it that way. I didn't do very well in tests, and I had a lot of comparison to my sister, who was incredibly smart. She was deputy head girl. She's incredible. We have an amazing relationship, and she's my business coach. She's absolutely insane. But what the teachers used to say to me really affected my ability to realize that I mattered and I was good enough just the way I was. And the school system is quite toxic in that way. I'm not sure what your schooling experience was like, but mine wasn't the best. But it sort of left me feeling really vulnerable when I left school, because I didn't feel good enough to take on certain things that I now I know I can. And again, that's what we're sort of dealing with, as I'm sure you might, dealing with in the Young Entrepreneurs and the Insecurity Project, is a lot of things stem from your younger years. So yeah, it is quite interesting to see how a lot of those things are built up and created from school or childhood, or family. So yeah.
Oh, I mean, without a doubt, every time in the journey of helping someone unpack their insecurity, it's always started from events and experiences when they were young, every single time. And that's the challenge of being a child. We come into the world with limited awareness, limited emotional intelligence, limited resources, and we've got to make sense of the chaos and the negativity and the hard things, the things that hurt. So the pattern is we tend to personalize and make them mean something bad about ourselves. That gets inside us, it forms negative opinions, and we develop concrete evidence around those opinions to think that they're true.
Yeah.
Become self-fulfilling prophecies. And then the challenge is those opinions then often go unreviewed for the rest of your life. So, a big part of solving insecurity is simply the process of going back and reviewing the opinions you formed about yourself at the key moments in time with more maturity, more information, more internal resourcefulness as an adult than you had as a child.
Yeah.
And seeing if those opinions were accurate or, in fact, maybe you got it wrong.
Yeah. For a young entrepreneur starting out, who is insecure and has a lot of fears and doubts about their journey, what would you sort of say, for their mindsets and for getting on the right track, what would you sort of say to them, and your first tips that they should really do?
Sure. Well, I'd say that people imagine their own struggles as complicated and unique, and they're the only one who ever feels like they do. That's complete lie. We all go through the same kinds of challenges. Insecurity is a universal issue.
Yeah.
Most people will never find a way out of it and will slowly descend into madness. And that is the only word to describe what happens if insecurity is left unresolved. So it's a central part of your work as an adult is to overcome insecurity. It's not for special people. It's not a mystery. It's a predictable problem with a predictable solution. It's probably your most meaningful and honest work. And it's work that the whole world will benefit from.
Yeah.
If you don't show up as your authentic self because you're afraid and you're hiding, well, we all miss out. So you're the only one of you. You've got a unique contribution to make, but we will miss out of it. We'll miss out on receiving it if you don't deal with insecurity. So I would say, it's hard, sure it's scary, but most of this fear is irrational. It's just because it feels so true to you because you haven't examined it. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I think I love the way you speak about it, because it's not, a lot of people take insecurity as something really personal. And it is personal because it's tied to personal events that's happened that have shaped you. But at the end of the day, insecurity is just that. It is just things that you aren't sure about. And when you're able to just step away from it and actually look at the bigger picture of things and be like, I actually can change, and I'm allowed to change, and I'm allowed to let go of those things that once held me down, that's when the game changes. Is a lot of people hold on insecurity as a part of them. And I think realizing that it isn't a part of you, and you can literally cut it off and let it go, is huge. So yeah, I really enjoy the way you speak about it, like it isn't a big deal, if you know what I mean. It is, but it isn't.
Yeah, you're right, and I think it's in my mind, it's a very simple problem, and I think it's beautiful when people discover that. And I think it almost is. It's a problem that qualifies you for the game. Like, it's not the main game.
Yeah.
If you don't solve insecurity, you never get qualified to really show up and play the real game. So I think it's meaningful work that then sets you up to live an effective and meaningful life.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. I love it. Absolutely love it. And then lastly, what is the next steps for the Insecurity Project? What are your New Year plans, and how can young entrepreneurs potentially get involved with you?
Sure. Yeah, well, I love working with leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners, because they've got skin in the game. So they come much more motivated to deal with this than employees.
Yeah.
So you're my people, and I love serving in communities like this. So it's very exciting. So next year I have scope to work with 50 entrepreneurs one-on-one. I've got retreats, two main retreats planned, one in March, one in September. As I mentioned before, my intention is to consult to the UN. It's to coach the next American president. It's to work with world leaders. That's all I think about. It's all I dream about. That's all I write about, because it would feel unkind to think of anything else. To me, we suffer greatly because our world leaders are insecure, and it's a very significant problem in the world. So it would be unkind to hold back a solution if that's what I'm sitting on, if that's what I've developed my whole life's work around. So that's where I'm heading.
Awesome. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for speaking with me. I really, really appreciate it. And we'll definitely chat sometime soon.
Okay.
And yeah, have a great evening.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Laura.
Cool. Thanks so much. Cheers. Bye.
Bye now.